Organissima, New York. Your exotic skin, hair, and beauty source, and your one-stop shop for all your natural and organic skin and hair care, featuring authentic organic Moroccan oil and prickly pear seed oil and much more. Bringing you only the best, straight from the source and proudly produced in the USA. So what are you waiting for? Shop today at www.organissima.com. Organissima, New York. Your beauty is our duty. Organissima, New York.
All right. Welcome back to the iHealth channel, iHealth Radio. New day, new show, and new topic, interesting topic. And more interestingly, it's really a guest that I have today from all the way India. And I've had guests from all over the world, literally. And, I'm excited because this is the first time I'm having someone from India. And really, the Asian continent, I would say, because I don't think I've had anyone from there yet. So I've covered pretty much, I think, four continents or 5 continents already. So that's good stuff, So for our audiences all over the world, this is going to be an interesting show today with my guest. And the topic today is unique because we've talked about concepts, but today we're going to talk about a movement. And it's not a political movement, so let's just be clear, but it's a movement about almost spirituality, and even deeper than that, it's really to renew your consciousness. And, we are not aware sometimes of our own self. And I think today we'll have a new view and angle on what consciousness means and how it works through our guest today. So without any further ado, I have with me Sandeep Nath, all the way from Delhi, India. And he is the founder of RENEWALism, a whole new concept or movement, again, as I stated. So Sandeep, welcome. How are you?
Thank you. Thanks, Harikan, for having me here. And hello, everybody. Great that you've tuned in. Let's see how this goes.
I know. Well, it's funny. Right now, it's the time here, like between us. I mean, it's almost what 8 hours, 9 hours, right? That's what it looks like.
9.5.
9.5.
9.5 of future.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, yeah, so this is almost like, Back to the Future, or like, traveling a time trip, like we're going in, traveling in time here. So I love those things, it's like, wow. But hey, listen, it is fun to at least understand the concept, and technology is bringing us closer. Everybody is available to everybody today. So that's the great part about, where technology is. So let's break it down first things first, so you're the founder of this particular movement, but let's take it back to your story, to the history, where it all started, how you even contemplated this concept. So take us through it.
All right. Thank you. So guys, I'm like most of us, any one of us. I was taught to study hard, get good grades, get a good education. So I got an engineering education, then I got a management education, and I set up a company. I worked for a few companies. I couldn't take that. So I decided I can't have a boss. So I set up a company, and we were into internal and external communications consulting, culture building for reasonably large brands and startups. And I ran that for about 10, 12 years. But somewhere while I was in that, in the early 2000s, I started getting disturbed. And what was this disturbance? This was to do with some large consumer product clients and some large business process outsourcing firms that we consulted to. And I got a feeling that these guys with these huge companies and these huge systems are creating more problems for us than they are solving. And when I say us, I mean humanity. They create a lot of cash flow problems for my company, of course. That's besides the point. What they were doing was, and I was part of that problem, we were urging people to open packets and stuff things into their mouths and think that that's good food, healthy and convenient and all that. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, there were these hundreds of thousands of kids in the early 20s, getting out of college, and thinking that the best place to work would be where they work against the biorhythm all through the night. Solving problems, to my mind, shouldn't have existed in the first place. Lame stuff, insurance and whatever. And without really having a future plan, without having a definition of purpose. What is my contribution really doing in the grand scheme of things? Why am I here? It was just good money and fooling around, getting chocolates in the office and whatever. I said, there's something wrong in this equation. This is not what the future of humanity can be. We can't be going around like automatons. And fast forward 15 years, we're still working like automatons, and it's not just in BPOs, it is across the IT industry, it's across so many industries. The corporate world has come to a point where we're probably going to be challenged by robots because we ourselves are working like them. And once we're challenged by robots, believe me, they're a lot more efficient. So they don't have emotional problems. they have none of the problems that we kind of have.
Well, they say AI is the future. So that's well, we can talk about that anyway. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
So that's where I sort of am coming from, and that's when I started looking for answers. Then, if this is not it, then what is our purpose? What is consciousness about? Where are we going? And as you guys are obviously aware, one looks for spiritual answers, especially when one is in India. So I turned to some of the Vedic gurus who happen to be in abundance in India. And I was just very fortunate to get an audience with some of the very senior, well-respected, more or less saints. If I had to take names, Sai Baba and Sri Ravi Shankar. And I was just fortunate to learn a bit from them, enough to know that by about 2010, it was time to hand my company over to the other directors and head out to learn from Tibetan lamas. And so I was off to the Himalayas, living in monasteries, understanding what they knew, which is pretty different from what anybody else in the world knows, because they worked for 1,000+ years on this in the midst of unraveling these secrets. And these are the secrets around our energy. They're the secrets around afterlife and what happens to us between lives and how we are all energy bodies. So a lot of Western literature has been written in the last 30, 40 years around this, but I dare say most of it is coming from Buddhist precepts. And we have good ways of interpreting it all in the West. I have my own interpretations, which I call inner power. So it's all about what we've got inside and the inner power and its confluence with divine energy and how that manifests everything. So we'll talk more about that perhaps, but just to come back to my story, that was some time that I spent understanding these things and then practicing them, working with them, and also moved away to working in Indian villages. So I spent about 6 years with micro entrepreneurs, microfinance, micro banking, micro energy, empowering women with solar energy products and grids and stuff like that. Very, very gratifying. In some sense, a newfound purpose. Meanwhile, working with energy myself and learning how that is an instrument to create health, happiness, and harmony. And I started doing talks and workshops around that. And that took me, with that abundance thing, you just manifest talks across about 46 cities in 4 continents in 4 or 5 years. And it was just before the pandemic hit that we got back to India, my wife and I. And we've been here ever since. But that helped me create some inner power programs, which you may want to share with your viewers and stuff like that.
Sure.
But it's just stuff that got me to compact 15 years of ancient Oriental wisdom into something that's consumable in your bedroom, in the privacy of your own house, through video instructions, and help you get that health, happiness, and harmony as daily habits, as stuff that you do to beat stress any point in time. So that's kind of the root of this whole renewalism thing, which in the end of 2019 became a book. This is the book. And I wrote this in 40 straight days, the end of November and December. And it was kind of channeled to me because 240 pages were just coming out of my fingers through the keyboard without me knowing what is the structure, what are the characters, what's happening next, and just unfolded. And so on renewalism.com, I put that out as the first line, that I may be the author, but I'm just a scribe for an energy form that channeled this through. And that energy form identified itself as Guru Pranachandra, who is the central character who's talking about this whole concept of renewalism. And when this book got published in 2020, and we received pretty decent international acclaim, we decided that we'd take it to the next level where it could become a movement. In fact, the pandemic helped in this direction. It was all about, as you can imagine, a lot to do with renewing ourselves lies within us. And it starts with mindfulness about who we are, what we're doing. And the pandemic has nudged us in the direction of being mindful, right? You're mindful about wearing the mask, you're mindful about the physical distance that you keep and personal hygiene and all that sort of stuff. And it seemed like a logical next step that before we regress into our old habits, we may just move into new habits about being more mindful about what we're consuming. Eating out of packets, for example, or how we're living against the biorhythm and stuff like that, for example. And is that right? So the pandemic also directly challenged some of these things, like telecommuting and the costs of real estate and those artificial bubbles, and how prepared the pharmaceutical industry is, and all these standards are. And it's unmasked a lot of this. It's unmasked a lot of mental health issues which we tended to put under the carpet earlier. And all that is got to be renewed only after you address it, you unmask it, and you ask questions about it. And so that's why the renewalism movement, which is just on its way out, I just rationalized that, since we're talking about consciousness, which affects us, we could be replaced by the robot, like we said. We might be thinking that this is something serious to look into, especially because in the last decade, we have thought that our consciousness vis-a-vis animals is something that is serious enough to look into, and we could change our habits and become vegans. So if veganism, which was thought of in the mid 20th century, could actually take off in the last 10, 20 years, maybe renewalism could take off in this decade itself, and because it directly concerns us. So that's the the background of why we have this book and why we have this movement going, and why I'm so ripped to be here on your show. Thank you so much.
Well, no. Well, thank you. First of all, thank you for that whole introduction, and you've touched on a lot of things, and I'd like to break all those down, to a bit, one piece at a time. But so first of all, I see the value of the concept as a whole, because as a matter of fact, I had a show last night. And it's about the status quo in life and how people just keep doing the same thing over and over, and there's no end in sight, and there's a burnout at the end, and there's sometimes bad outcomes, and how to prevent some of that. But to do that, in the discussion we had, was about like some solutions that you have to take a pause and reset kind of concept, right? exactly what you did. but you did it in a different angle. You did it with a maybe a spiritual background. I mean, you did your research, you did a little bit of sabbatical, you went there and learned from generations, or at least from generations of concepts. But before I get into even that and consciousness and all that, you've hit, the first few years you were working, and most of us, we start off from college, with that perception that we're going to go out there, going to work for somebody, for a company, make a career path for us, not a job, it's a career. We're going to be successful. And we do. I mean, the majority of people, that's kind of like the dream. But you mentioned the concept of happiness and health and harmony. And isn't that sweet? Because that's everybody's literal true dream. I mean, we all want to have that. We want to have happiness, we want to be healthy and have a harmonious life, right? But that's the thing. Like, it doesn't work that way. We work, we go crazy, and there's different things. And then to your point, we also get involved in sometimes practices that we might not be so happy about, or we can start. When you're in a business, when you're in industry, the details of that industry, the tricks, right? And sometimes that of the practices may be good. And you realize also sometimes, are we doing really good? Are we doing hard? And unfortunately, there's a very different fine line when you're in industry of making decisions. Because if you make a decision against your industry, you're out. And a lot of people don't want to do that out because they're afraid of their financial, outcomes and things like that. It could be affecting them, financially. So that's a big deal. Now you've discovered that, and you kind of like said, okay, first of all, I don't want to work for somebody. That was good, because a lot of people actually eventually say, why do I have to work for people when I can do my own? And you did. But then you went there and you still was not fulfilling enough. And then now you said, okay, enough. I got to do some more stuff here and some more digging. And then you went to the world of spirituality, or at least, the wisdom of spirituality. And again, you mentioned abundance in India. And I know you guys in India have so many types of religions and beliefs and real, I mean, it's very diversified. Let's just put it in a very simple way. I mean, I think you have more than people can handle, right? And but it's all coming almost for the same concept. I mean, when you look at religion in general, spirituality, they're all kind of, religion and spirituality can be also differentiated, separated, in terms of dogmas and, concepts. But at the end of the day, they still come from the same source. Some people say, I'm spiritual, I'm not religious. But really, you're still talking about divine and the unknown and the body and the experience and all that stuff, And so now you're talking from science to a world of the unknown, because you were talking about concrete stuff, business, this, that, physical things. And then you talked also about the transition from humanoids or humans to humanoids, or maybe even, artificial intelligence, which is currently the fear of the future. I mean, everything can be, and we see it now. I mean, we have enough AI, that is advanced enough, not scary enough yet. We don't have cybernets and some of those movie, sci-fi movies where you have like these AIs that take over the world. But a lot of ways, you're right. I mean, there are functions today that have been eliminated or at least replaced by robots and programs and things like that. You don't even have to do things, So again, the fact that that's awareness for you, you were just aware of like what's going on. And that's, by the way, a lot of people are not aware all the time because they're just in the zone. They're, again, status quo. They're like literally just tunnel vision. They just do what they have. They're almost robotic. And you mentioned it as funny as it sounded. We are actually robotic for the most part. We just are afraid of the real robots to take over. But it is the reason we do this. I mean, because to your point, robots may not make the mistake. It's programmable once it's done. Now, unless they start thinking for themselves, that's another story, which is a fear of AI. But the fact of the matter is, is that going to replace humans? That's a big debate, and there's different angles and different movements on that just itself as a concept. So again, these are some of the elements that you've mentioned, but they all tie in. But the core concept here that ties in at the end of the day is that we humans are couple of things. We have the physical aspect of us, but then there's the consciousness or the other body, energy within us. Now, that can be perceived, I think, in every world differently. So in the world of religion, we call it, the soul. And spiritually, it's just the your consciousness. Same, different words could be the same thing. But nobody understands it, deep enough to understand what it is. We know it exists because we do know that there's something running these bodies, right? Or within us.
Right.
And we know it's something that fulfills, the beliefs and the society. However, nobody understands this correctly. Now, you've experienced this differently because you did spend years, you said, in the Himalaya and with I mean, those are like the monks. I mean, these people are deep. That's all they know. They know better than most. They live that inside out, day in, day out, And again, they might have their own vision of it, because some people can say, well, my religion doesn't really see it the same way, and my other religion doesn't see it this way, because every religion has its own angle. But at the end, if you actually really deep dive into all, they all have the same concept, and they all kind of like try to teach good practices to everybody, and they all are about harmony and stuff like that. I mean, there are variations, but really it's the same purpose, but in a different language, if you want to call it that way, with minor variations. So you did all this, and that's actually excellent, because you took all that, you absorbed it, then you came back, and then you started delivering that through your communities with your own way. And you took it to the next level. Now you went to writing a book. And the book, the title, Renewal, right? Is that the title of the book I was reading from?
That's right.
Yeah, Renewal. Well, we all want to renew our energy, right? We all want to renew ourselves and better ourselves. I don't think anybody can really be against that concept, right? Everybody wants to wake up in the morning refreshed, right? That's renewal. It's just, how do we take it to and what level, and how can we implement those things from a spiritual world to a physical world, if you want to call it that way, right? And that's the balance. Like, how do we do both? Now, you've discovered, I think you've discovered that balance based on what I'm hearing right now. So I want to dive into that one. So you went into the spiritual journey and learned all these concepts, but then you also applied them physically. So how hard was it? How easy was it? And what is the secret sauce in there? That's a lot of stuff, but
that's a good point to come to with all that stuff, because this is practical, guys. What we're talking about is, how does one renew? How does one stay in a state of high energy, whether it's 10 a.m. or 10 p.m.? You would like that, wouldn't you?
I love that.
So before I address that, let me just, Harikan, address a little point about religion, because this is completely non-religious. And I want all of us to get that same context in our head. Mm-hmm. You see, we are all a trinity of the body, the mind, and the spirit. Mm-hmm. I agree with you that the spirit, there could be different labels. Some might call it soul, some might call it other things. But we definitely agree in the body, the physicality, and the mind, the mentality, right? The spirit is what I choose to call it, is spirituality. It is us. It is the energy form. It is the most subtle form. If the body is ice and the mind is water, which is the same thing, but subtler, then spirit is steam, which is subtlest. And that's us. That is each one of us. So everybody is spiritual. You can't escape it. It flows. It is energy. It is matter. E is equal to mc square. Finally, science has caught up with it in the last 100 years. We've known it for 5,000 years. So all matter is energy. All energy is matter. Religion is when that spirituality, the flow of it is stopped. A part of that is packaged. And as one of my Vedic gurus said it so eloquently, I'll never forget the way he put it. So one line which will stay with you listeners: religion is the fossil of spirituality. You compact it, press it down, put it down 1,000 years, and you're left with, like you said, some dogmatic practices. But it still points to the same flow, the same energy. If you really study every fossil, it would lead to the same carbon, let's say, which is the free-flowing element. So you have the same element in the diamond, you have the same element in carbon dioxide, you have the same thing in the fossil. Just to set to rest that point and bring us on the same page. When I talk about spirituality, I may not talk much about it, but I'm referring to us as the body, mind, spirit.
Well, Sandeep, I mean,
Now,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
No,
go
ahead.
on.
No, I was going to say, I mean, you're right. I mean, we cannot, it's one or the other. It's all in one. I mean, there's no difference. I mean, we have to function, and we have those three elements, and everyone can actually almost agree to it. I think they can agree. You do have a mental state, and you think, and you also have which I always refer to as the ghost in the machine, which is the energy that drives, and that energy is actually cosmic. So we all know that it's part of the same energy in the universe, and even physically, from the physics, they have discovered that every single element in this universe is made by the same element. Well, and everything that exists in the universe is made by the same elements. So and that's the bottom line. And we're talking about, like, real tiny particles, whether it's a star, whether it's a moon, whether it's an asteroid, or it's humans, we come from the same stuff. But at the end of the day, we're all about electrons and protons and a lot of energy matter. That's the physics, maybe a review of this. But because we tend to always think the world is a matter, physical matter, and physics actually have almost claimed that this whole world is about 90% empty. And because if you look at everything made of atoms, and made of atoms, and then the atoms are electrons and protons, and there's a lot of space in between, 90% empty. So really, what's really matter, right? So it kind of begs the question that, like, what is beyond this? And I think when I mentioned religion has different angles, right? Some religions are more, I guess, progressive, and they open. Some are not. Some actually fit in the science realm, and they can, cover some of that. To your point, some of them are very antiquated, and they just, they're not open to others. But at the end of the day, we're still in the same, everybody almost has that feeling like there is more, and we're not just these beings. And a good place to sometimes really think about that is when you sleep. I mean, your body is physically here, but you're still alive. You're still, energized somewhere. I mean, that's where your dreams come true, right? So there's more things to it, but, like, we don't question things most of the time. We're not into the business of really thinking beyond what we know. I mean, we learn things, and to your point, we're robotic. We just redisplay the stuff we learned. We reapply what we learned over and over, and it's the same monotonous routine, day in, day out. That's the issue. But overall, when we think about it, there is more to us. And when you seek spirituality, when you start thinking beyond the realm of, like I think I mentioned one time, there's a book I had read, The Secret Beyond Matter. Or the book actually was called the Matter, the Other Name for Illusion. So it's a philosophical, and to a degree where you think about, like, just the title itself can throw you wrong. Like, what the hell? What does that mean? It's an illusion. It is an illusion because, but again, people will debate with you. Like, what do you mean it's an illusion? I exist. I can feel my bones. Yes, you can through senses. But then what is and then we can debate that whole thing for over and over. Now, in your concept, you've kind of like removed that part, and you just highlight it into more of the energy, the body. And again, people have to be willing to accept that. See, that's the other thing. People are not really ready sometimes to think and hear this. You're an energy being. You're made of light, or some sort of electrical, or electric concept, right? And electricity is energy, right? But there's other types of energy out there, and some of them we can see, some of them we can't see. Even the light spectrum, right? I mean, you have so many, we have X-rays, gamma rays, different waves that you're not even seeing with the eye. And sometimes there's antimatter that is still existing out there, and it's all connected one way or the other, whether you like it or not. The universe is one. Right. And then now we talk about God and and the creation and almighty power and all that stuff. So there's more to that, and people can debate that a big time. I mean, that causes war sometimes. But at the end of the day, we can just slow it down, bring it down to the level where we're talking about a simple thing. We can renew our own energy, which is your concept, based on certain formulas. So with that, I don't want to continue, discussing that concept. I want you to actually share with us, what that next move is. What's the connection?
All right. So that was great, because that just gives us a great segue to get into what causes our health, happiness, and harmony to go out of whack. And that, if I am to put it in one word, would be misalignment. If you're out of alignment of anything, you would tend to be stressed. If, let's say, you're doing something and you're feeling something else about what you're doing, you would be stressed in that action. If you are like I never wanted to serve under a boss, because the boss would say some things which were against my thoughts, and that would be stressful. It's a misalignment. Mm-hmm. So if we look at it, there are these wonderful trinities about everything. And like the body, mind, and spirit is the fundamental trinity. The stuff that we do, that's physicality. The stuff that we think and what we think we say is mentality. And the stuff that we feel, which is deep at a subconscious level, the being, is our spirituality. We're spiritual beings that way. So I call this the say, do, be harmony. So when what we say, what we do, and what we be are out of alignment, then we're out of that harmony. So the key word is alignment, and this alignment is between these three elements of body, mind, and spirit. And bringing ourselves back into alignment is the secret of being stress-free. So in another sense, enemy of stress is energy, because you would have noticed this. It's commonplace. When you are really energized about something, you don't feel stressed doing very, very difficult things as well. But when you are stressed, then you are low on energy. In fact, we use those words: low spirits, low energy, right? Feeling down. Mm-hmm. So stress and energy are kind of antipolar. They are enemies, natural enemies. They don't go along. Now, you and stress, I would imagine you as the listener would be considering stress an enemy. I mean, who wants stress? Stress, let's understand this. Stress is always, when I talk about stress, it is distress. Okay, the stress that comes involuntarily. You may stress yourself out over a treadmill, or you may stress yourself out over a crossword puzzle, but that's voluntary. It's distress, which is involuntary, which is our enemy. So if we go back to the art of war, ancient wisdom, the enemy of your enemy is your friend. So your solution lies in forging a partnership, to say, with energy. And that's why I would vote for spirituality, because that's when you get connected with the higher power. And you can give it any name. I mean, it's just a label. You call it atoms. That's the most comfortable thing for the scientific mind. You just get comfortable with being in partnership with all those atoms you have around you, in the space around you, in your aura, whatever the words that come to your mind. That really doesn't matter. It's about understanding this concept that you are working with steam. Now, when you work with steam, you are in a position to boil the water. You're in a position to melt the ice, which are metaphors for clearing out mental and emotional disbalances and physical incongruencies, disorders, problems, even chronic issues. But do we really understand how to work with that ice, with that steam? Or are we still struggling with the hammer and chisel over the ice? That's like going to the gym. Or working with the mind, which is what the psychotherapists do, and even what meditation does, for that matter. Yoga does. Yoga is the joining of body and mind to have mind over matter. Affirmations do that. Right? But working with steam comes at the level which is working with chi. You must have heard of things like Qigong, which is working with energy, or Reiki, which is universal energy in Japanese, and Rei being universal, Ki being the same as Chi. I'm not advocating that everybody's got to know this, but what I can say from my experience is that if you are able to forge that partnership, you could self-regulate your health. You wouldn't need to see a doctor ever again, because you are able to clear those disbalances and misalignments with a very divine partnership. But if not that, there's another method of doing it, and that's what the book Renewal is about. Because I like to simplify stuff and do stuff which can be done anytime, anywhere, and still bring you in that state of alignment. So would that be what we get cracking on, or do you have a comment before I start on that?
No, actually, I was going to ask you, like, what are those steps? But I did want to make a quick comment. So you did mention about the Chi and Reiki and all that, but we all know these concepts, and people actually meditate, even those that are not even spiritual, and they know that. And you're right, people take a minute to take care of themselves and kind of like USA, right? They'll be better, they feel better. And a lot of, even without even talking spirituality or even renewal, people are doing it, but they're just not doing it to the extent. I mean, some people are figuring out ways about it, but it does work. And even in the religion aspect, where you're really like meditating, and some people consider religion a meditation form, and you're at that level, you get that level where you're like in harmony with yourself, where you're like cool, calm, collected. But that's really the objective of everyone. But everybody reaches that point in their own way, based on their own beliefs. But at the end of the day, there is a simple, or there's a comparable way across all beliefs. But in your form is really taking all that, without labeling it, and just giving it a simple way to do this. So that takes us to those steps. So what are those steps?
So these steps arise from something which I call the TBHAR, TBHAR spiral. Now, the TBHAR spiral is obviously, as you would have guessed, an acronym, and it is how we achieve anything in life. It starts with T, which is thoughts, right? Which is a very subtle thing again. So whenever I take the word subtle, you go back to like energy, right? So thoughts are energy impulses that come to us, and I'm given to understand they come to us about 60,000 times a day. That's what's been measured. So there are too many thoughts that happen. Yeah, you didn't know that? Okay, so the interesting part is that there are 84,000 seconds in a day, which means almost every 1.5 seconds you have a thought without realizing it.
Well, that is crazy, because I mean, who's even thinking about like how many thoughts I get a day? But you're like when you put it, I was like, huh? That's amazing. Like, there is actually even statistics about that, but I didn't know. I mean, that, but you're right. People, these are things that we just not even think about. They're there. Just people are not, observing enough, or like they're not really like, what are my thoughts today? How many thoughts did I have today? Good, bad, ugly. Right? Nobody's questioning that. Sorry, so that was just funny. But go ahead.
These are not things that have come from ancient wisdom. These are numbers that have come out of EEG machines or FMRs or whatever those very fancy equipment is called. And they have sort of measured those pulses and said 60,000 per day. Whew. I believe it. I mean, speaking of believing, beliefs. You mentioned the word beliefs, and I wanted to share with our listeners a little clarification on that word. Your beliefs arise from your knowledge. So you agree with some, you don't agree with some. The ones you agree with become your beliefs. And sometimes you don't agree with it, but it becomes your belief because it's just planted into some subconscious connection that you have with it. So I won't go into that level of depth, but all I'm saying is that you don't need to believe in energy. You need to experience it. And once you experience it, if you do, you may start believing it, and understand that, hey, Einstein was right after all. So it's just like that, you don't have to have understood where that formula came from, but you can see matter convert to energy, and you're sorted for life. Then you don't question that. It's just like electricity, like you mentioned a while ago. We don't have to believe that there are wires behind it going all the way to the substation. We have to have the bulb coming on when we press the switch. If the bulb comes on and once you press the switch, you don't even do as much as take a drill and make a hole behind the switch box to check if there's a wire there. You don't. Nobody does that. Right? Because they've experienced it. Now I believe I've got electricity in this house. Why do you believe so? Well, I saw the bulb. Okay. So if you can feel the energy, and like you say, many of us feel it. In prayer, sometimes when the doctors give up, they say, now you got to pray. we connect with that energy, and miracles manifest. Okay. Woo-woo.
And true, yeah.
But it's not woo-woo.
Well, they're not miracles, but yeah.
It's just understanding that you have got some steam jets working without realizing it. Whoa, what did I do there? And probably you didn't do anything either. You just set in motion certain phenomena that haven't been scientifically measured yet. So the moment we can start measuring the impact of a mantra, for example, a mantra is, everybody knows what a mantra is, right? It comes from Sanskrit. But the breakup of the word mantra is man, meaning mind, and tra, meaning taking it somewhere to a destination. So the mantra takes your mind to a place. And that's why there are mantras for peace, because you keep saying that and the mind goes to peace. Why am I saying this? Because I just lost the thought connect over there.
No, we were talking about the first, piece of the acronym, thoughts. I mean, so we're thinking, and then we're breaking down.
Let's come back to that.
That's all right.
The point simply was that the thoughts, there are so many of them, and we're not in cognizance of all of that, right? So, of course, a mantra would take our thoughts somewhere that we can process them in some way. But what we want to know is that from these thoughts, we have certain behaviors, that's what the B is about, certain tendencies that we tend to work upon at a mental level, even without realizing this. These things have become hardwired somewhere, right? And these are what we call synaptic connections. So there is a synaptic connection that's been built in the mind, or whatever you might call it. They call it the brain, but it's built. And that results in our first physical manifestation of what I'd call habit, H. So from habits, just to complete the TBHAR spiral, is the A, actions. So we are creatures of habit, like they say, because our actions are determined by our habits. And actions bring results. So if you want different results, they say you got to think differently, which is correct because it's on the TBHAR, they're the ends of the spectrum.
Behave differently, act differently, therefore get different results. I love it. Go ahead.
Now, the key here is that can you really think differently? You want different results, but maybe you read a book, maybe you go for a seminar, a lot of rah stuff, 3 days, 5 days, and then you regress back to the old way of things and you get the same results again.
Insanity,
you're not losing
right?
weight. You're not.
Well, that's insanity, right? You do the same thing, expect different outcomes, right? So if you think about it, you got to make the changes and take the different actions and different behavior to actions, and then you get the results. And you got to maintain that if you want to keep.
Now you're getting warm. You are getting warm. You're coming into.
I feel that energy, baby.
Where does this action come from? The action is not the cause of anything. It may seem like it's causing the result, but the action is actually the result of the real cause, which is the habit. Because that's the first physical thing that you do. So you may have a lot of tendencies, but those tendencies are mental, and they convert into a physical thing as a habit. I'll give you an example just to clarify.
Mm-hmm.
You're in a car, and there is oh, I shouldn't have said that. Okay, but anyhow, you're on the move, and there's a ball coming at you, right? Now, the thought is, ball is going to hit me, right? So there's a survival instinct that immediately plays in. And what do?
Close your eyes.
We may close our eyes if we're brave, but we may want to veer away and just bend our neck or bend the spine so that we're not directly in the line of the trajectory, right? And then we discover that we have a windshield and the ball bounces off the windshield. And often we do this even when we have a windshield because we're not thinking about it, because we're just driven by the habit of turning our neck or our spine. That's a habit. We do that physically. Now, when we do that physically, the action is that we have moved away from the ball, the trajectory of the ball. And the result is that the ball doesn't hit us. We're safe. But when we realized that we had a windscreen in front, the habit remained the same, the action remained the same, but the result was we feeling stupid. Right? Oh man, why didn't I think of that?
Or maybe you hit another car, God forbid. Not a good outcome, but hey.
Okay, so for sake of this illustration, so that all our
I love it. I love it. It's all
aligned with us. Let's just imagine we're on this open road, you're feeling stupid. Man, why didn't I think of that? Now it's a different result. Now you probably stuck with that result, which is giving rise to other thoughts that I've always felt so stupid. And then we probably realize that our spouse is sitting next to us, and just because our head has gone close to our spouse, it's our spouse who's responsible. And suddenly on that freeway, we've got this huge altercation happening because of that ball, and how I shouldn't have married you. So one thing leads to the other. But the point here is about the habits. Because if we can increase the gap between the tendency, the behavior, and it's a millisecond gap, and actually taking action, doing something, we would, what they call, be more mindful. We would be in that state of mindfulness, remembering what it is that we are really doing. If you remember in that instant, I've got a windscreen in front, let me enjoy this one. And you watch that ball coming at you and going splat against the windscreen. Tell you what, you may never have seen that sight in your life. Let's try it. It's something to tell your grandkids. I saw that ball and the squishy form that it forms is so amazing. You must take a look. Now you've got a story. That's the result. You've got this sense of great satisfaction. I'm smart, right? That's good. And that's why mindfulness is so great. And let me tell you, mindfulness is not a modern fad. It's not something that has come about now. It's something that the Buddha put down 16 foundations for, 4 foundations and 16 steps for arriving in this state of mindfulness and using the state of mindfulness to achieve liberation. So it goes a long way, man.
Well, I mean, again, these are ancient practices, and to your point, I mean, they have been in practice for centuries, and but remember, we live in a modern Western world today, for the most part, and contemporary, and we've got into science more in medicine, and we've kind of veered out a little bit off, some of the ancient practices. And I think that's actually what a lot of people are finding themselves. They're just disconnected from those old teachings and practices, and they were actually solid. And some people still maintain, when you went to the Himalayas, you really lived amongst, those folks that actually still are so attached to those traditions and those practices that they're probably unique in the world currently. There are a few that do that. Yep. That must have been such an experience, I have to say.
Totally. And the Zen monks are famous for this practice of mindfulness, and so are all monks for that matter. But that is the substrate, that is the basis. And I'm so happy that now we have scientific measurements which ratify, validate that there is mindfulness as a basis of stress reduction. So it's good that the modern world is now understanding this, and renewal is about creating habits. So there are a series of habits, and like I said, when I was scribing this book, I had no idea that I'm going to be writing about habits, but it's turned out to be a set of habits which is automatically so beautifully structured. And I say beautifully because it's Guru Pranachandra who's responsible. There are 10 habits to get yourself in alignment, the self-renewal. And they start from the time that you wake up, and how you can start pumping your energies through the ends of your feet and through your breath, even before you get out of bed, to give your organs a kind of wake up, good morning message. Now, if you do that on a daily basis, it takes hardly 3-4 minutes. It could be between snooze buttons, you accomplish a very important job, which is of acknowledging your body form. You acknowledge your colleagues when you go to office, let's say, and even though there's nothing very good about the morning, maybe you spilled coffee over your pants or whatever happened, you perfunctorily smile at them and say good morning, don't you? Now, if you can say that to somebody outside you in the morning, just because you're greeting them in the morning for the first time, how about starting inside you and starting to develop inner power? It's just a habit, and it doesn't need much of validation. It's commonsensical, because you do it in the office, you do it in your organization, let's say. So there is an organization of a lot of organs that you have inside. Let's start smiling within and pumping them up. Makes sense? It's just social conditioning to do it outside. It's your conditioning to do it inside, and you start with that.
Well, again, it's simple. Who would have thought about that? I mean, I'm just greeting myself.
Is the simplest written treatise on solving all the problems of the world. The byline here, it says, your unexpected role in saving the planet. It's your role, guys, because it's your habits, and they will work to energize you from the time you wake up to the time you sleep, and keep yourself energized, because those are those 10 habits of self-renewal. And then there is another set of habits for symbiotic renewal. And symbiotic would mean where we have dependencies, and we're all dependent on each other. We're dependent on the environment, we're dependent on the planet, and we're dependent on each other. We're dependent on money, we're dependent on so many things. And we have relationships with these things. And we get stressed because our relationships go out of whack, right? We've got a bad relationship with money, we suddenly find ourselves getting back to zero every time. There are patterns that develop, and psychotherapists have a lot of ways to get out of stuff like this. But you can create habits to prevent it. That's it. You prevent it at source. You prevent relationships between people going sour. There's a methodology called the PACE awareness, which is about the alphabets PACE, which can be invoked in seconds to prevent conflict. And so symbiotic renewal is all about how we habitualize. And before I say more about habits, I must make it very, very clear to those of you in the audience who are thinking that, man, habits are so difficult to set up, or so difficult to break, or so difficult to change. They're not. It's just that you haven't really thought about how habits are created in the first place. You are buying into a belief that is not true. There is one habit which you set up even before you had spent 10,000 hours on this planet. Probably you'd done it not even 21 days or 66 days, a big number. It was done in maybe 2 days. In my case, it was done in 2 days, I can expect. Because this is the habit of having a bath. And mom one day decided that I was 2 years old, and she said, you're not getting your breakfast until you finished your bath. And I would have probably revolted. I don't really remember, but I don't think I would have revolted more than 2 days. And then third day I was in line. I have my bath, I get my breakfast. So, and that's probably applicable to the majority of us, It's a habit that served me for decades.
Well, yeah, well, habits there's a whole concept about that because we say habits die hard, but the problem is we got to pick them up first before they before we can become you, right? So it's a challenge.
So I leave the audience with the thought that habits being hard or easy is just a belief system. You want to believe it's easy, then Guru Pran Chandra will explain to you exactly how they are to be set up, how you just need 2 triggers and poof, you're set into something else. So you can be set into these symbiotic renewal habits as well, and improve your relationships and improve your interaction with your environment, right? Could be a physical environment, could be your geographical environment, could be your financial environment, whatever it is. And then there are these set of systemic renewal habits. And these are about the systems that have stopped serving us. And we've just been too busy to notice. And it took a pandemic, like I said earlier, to prod us about some of these systems like schooling. Now, there was so much stress around schooling last year because teachers didn't have laptops, they didn't have bandwidth, students didn't have it. And suddenly it was forced upon us. But I say that we can renew that entire system and bring in the human connection appropriately and bring in the joy of playing and all that without having to spend hours commuting and exposing the world to that kind of pollution. And all of that, because we have seen that happen. We've seen the impact of telecommuting now and how that's resulted in clearer skies and the dolphins coming out and all sorts of things. And we can do it by design, which is systemic renewal. And in fact, these are a couple of things that I had written in December 2019. And when I saw in February, March that, especially with the lockdown scheme, that's when I said that, man, this book has to go out to people. And I'm so grateful to you, Arakan, for publishing this episode because you reach out to so many lovely people. And I'd really like this to be, I'd like to say that your podcast is a partner in the renewalism movement because you're helping spread the word. So we individuals can change systems, we can change policy because we are people who write policy, right? Ultimately, it's not written by a robot yet. And till the day it isn't, we can change it.
That would be scary. I don't know which one will be scarier, humans or robots, but we'll see. Humans can be just as dangerous, right? But you're right. I mean, right. I think just how you're breaking it down and step by step. I mean, you haven't stated anything that is very difficult. It's in front of us. Like you said, simple, like looking up, and waking up in the morning and greeting yourself. That's just like, who's doing that anyways? Like, hey, hi, good morning, me. Nobody's doing, but you're right. It's not necessarily stating that, but just being conscious about you, and it's a new day. Let me just get my stuff. You're talking about the systems, and you're right. The pandemic really showed us a lot of new ways of doing things. For the longest, for example, companies demanded people to be at work and clock in and clock up. Work didn't stop. A lot of companies just did this remote. And I mean, yes, it takes away the personable touch, right? But it made it convenient. You can still deliver. And so even school, yeah, it was a challenge in the beginning because of infrastructure, because of access to technology and stuff. But beyond that, the world has seen probably one of the best resets of the ozone layer in that time frame, because there's less commute and less cars on the road, and even there were some negatives of that because people got stressed and there's mental illnesses and they were like really cramped into homes and things.
We weren't prepared for it. You see, if you do the same thing by design, you will be prepared. Then there will not be the stress.
That's right.
And that's what renewal is about.
Well, you're right. And that's the thing. So that was just like, hey, here's a lesson. And matter of fact, on the previous show I mentioned earlier, we talked about that. Like it takes an event for you to kind of like, whoa. But if you already ahead of the game and understand, you don't have to learn from your experience. You can learn just from history. And by the way, nothing that happened this last year didn't happen before. I mean, pandemics have been around, and there have been preparations for these things, but I don't think people were expecting it. And you know, no one expected it to be that, and they expected it to be a week or two, and then it turned out to be a year and 2 years, right? And so I think that's the problem. People just, like, again, creatures of habits. but you know, we just have to reset those habits to better ones, I guess. That's really, I think, that the renewal concept, that at least I'm getting it. You know, just because you're conditioned to a set of rules, because that's how it is. Like, and this is very typical over the history. And it's the first common answer to everything, like, oh, that's how I learned it. That's how it's been done. Well, just because it's been done that way doesn't mean that it has to be that way. You can find a new way. Thus, you can improve, and process improvement comes from there. And that's what you're introducing the same concept, but for your lifestyle, for a better you. And I think that there's anybody here can be benefiting from that.
And organizations too, because when we're talking about people, we're talking about the trinity of the P's, you know, people, purpose, and process. And the book dwells on purpose and processes are what systems are about. And when we apply it this way at the habit level, which is at the center of the TBHAR spiral, then it acts both ways. Because you've changed a habit, or you've maybe just tweaked a habit, you will find a different result. And not only would you find the impact on the result end, you would find the impact on the thinking end, because you've done it. So now you own the damn thing. It's not some motivational speaker telling you that. It's not some book telling you that. It is you experiencing that. What we were saying in the context of energy, what we were saying in the context of belief earlier. When you have seen the light bulb go on, anybody telling you that you don't have electricity, I mean, go fly a kite, man. I know I have got electricity. So your thought has changed. And once your thought has changed, innately, using your inner power, you have changed the tendencies, the behaviors around it, and the habits, and you're on a different trajectory altogether. Forever, it stays.
Well, keyword thoughts. Thoughts is also knowledge, and really taking it. I mean, because to your point, we have a lot of thoughts every day, but do we really pay attention to them? So when you think, I mean, if you think about all the science discoveries, someone thought about something, but they did something about it. you know how many people, like, you know, I'm sure everybody listens probably can relate to the example I'm going to say, that you had ideas as thoughts, but you didn't act on. Nothing changed. The minute you start acting on an idea, now you have Zoom, you have, you know, lights, you have prompters, you have computers, you have, you know, technology, Wi-Fi, but you got to think and act, behave, act, change, results. And again, those are concepts that, you know, we're kind of aware of, but we're not practicing daily. And I think some people are aware of them because they've already established that, they already rise, you know, they're above that. But not everybody is doing it. So the concept here is really sharing this with the common folks, you know, like, hey, you can do this too. Everybody can. It's time to reset.
Everybody.
Boom. And I don't think I think it's a sweet idea. It's awesome, because we all need that. Like we need that refresher. It's almost a refresher course, like, you know, and matter of fact, again, we said the same thing, that you have to stop and restart yourself, almost like reboot. And that's all there is. You reboot, but you reboot in a better way, you know, with real knowledge, with real concepts that are in place, with real steps that can, and behaviors that can help you do better and be better and help everybody around you. And by the way, you did that. So when you came back, you stated earlier that you went and did some work in the villages, you know, helping, assisting, doing things. Now that's awesome, because you learned, you changed, but you now contribute. And I think that's an honorable mission for anyone listening, that when we change ourselves and for the better, I think it's also good for us to share that value with the rest of us, and also be better, positive contributors to society around us, and to our families and friends and everybody. So those are real noble, you know, causes, if you want to call them that way. So that's important.
Thank you. Yes.
So I know we've just passed the time frame that we've agreed on, well, at least that we thought we would have. Like I told you, you know, we get into a discussion, it just takes its own, and that's always good. So a couple of things. One is any, you know, summary words that you'd like, or like, you know, advice that you want to give people before we end the show. And also, Where is the book available, and how can people get, a glimpse at the book?
Thank you. So let me answer the second question first. RENEWALism.com is where you can download a PDF copy absolutely free. There's a pay what you want button, and you can put 0.00 in any currency and download it. But if you want to pick it up from any of the leading online portals, it's available everywhere. You can also get print copies from Amazon and Barnes & Noble, various places. So the RENEWALism.com has got all the links to all the sites across most of the English-speaking countries, and you can find it in yours. Thank you for asking. RENEWALism.com also has a section on looking inside, on reading the preface, which I would very much recommend, and even reading the habits. So you have an idea of what these structures of habits are, which will change your thinking and change your results. So take a look. And if you'd like to be part of the movement, just reach out to me. You've got my contact number there. There's something we can do with individuals. There's something we can do with organizations. And it's all about getting to understand that this affects each one of us. And it's your unexpected role in saving the planet. That's the starting point. I would like to leave you with the thought that you can be grateful for anything. There are so many things that happen to us, including this pandemic, for instance, which somehow or the other, there is this phrase, blessing in disguise. Sometime or the other, we realize, oh man, that was actually a blessing in disguise. Think of the number of times you use that phrase. Why was it in disguise? It was in disguise because we failed to take cognizance of that event being a blessing when it happened. If we can be grateful for anything that happens, including things that look really bad, we can be in blessing all the time, because we just don't know the grand design of how things are, because energy is flowing all the time. All we can do is get into the energy of gratitude and program, and there are habits to do that, program ourselves to make that a subconscious reflexive impulse. Whatever happens, how can I be grateful for it? And you will feel blessed. I'd like to leave all of you with that feeling of blessing, and thank you for being with us through this hour.
I'm not even going to add anything. I mean, I really am not going to add anything. That was sweet. That was good. That was awesome. I mean, I love that. and you know what? That's a great advice. I mean, we all can use that advice and we can all practice it. So thank you for that. So again, we're coming to the end of the show. So Sandeep, it was just an awesome hour. We had so much interaction here and dialogue and real core things. And I don't think these things do affect anyone's belief. As a matter of fact, they can apply to anyone. I don't think it's persuading someone to move in and changing the stuff. They can apply this no matter what their backgrounds and whatever they are in the world, because it's all positive. And I think that gratitude feeling you close with is the most valuable we can all have. And we are grateful for the opportunity to have this discussion today. And hopefully people can see that value. And so again, thank you for the work you're doing and for bringing this to the surface and to people and to the minds. And for me, folks, thank you for watching the iHealth channel, listening on iHealth Radio. Hurricane H here. We'll be seeing you again next week. Different show, different topic, different guest. Bye for now.